Which brings us, though, to our final team of this group here, which is the Blue Jays, which I think is the most fascinating one. We're almost pushing up on an hour recording here, so let's sit up on our seats and try not to spend too much time on the Blue Jays, because honestly, I don't know what they do. They are falling out of the race fast, and we were talking about this on an editors meeting today. Like they were saying, Ross Atkins, like, is he going to sell? When if he sells, he might be out of a job. That's when you get to that point with the GM. That's the other thing about the Mets. David Stearns just got here. He's got no worries about that. You have a GM in a tenuous spot with a team that has maybe a year or two left of this window. They could blow it up and they could reset their farm. They could trade Vladdy. They could trade Bo Bichette. They could even trade Kevin Gausman, who's under a great contract and would be the best pitcher dealt at this deadline if they wanted to. But will they do it? That's the toughest one to figure out, I think.
Anytime that you have superstar players to trade, because we got to discuss Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., free agents this time in 15 months, right?
Yeah.
At the end of 2025, you want the next general manager to be the one in place to say, hey, we've got this trade chip and we're going to be bringing back a lot. Well, I would like to have a say as to what we bring back, because if the guy before me got a bunch of pieces, I don't like any of these. I think that was a bad trade. So
Yeah.
you want that new guy to be in place, which leads me to believe that Atkins is probably going to be around, and it is going to be his decision to figure out what's going to go on. Now, I think because you still have Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr. in 2025, you probably still have money to at least extend one of those players after that. You want to roll this thing back. Now, you could tap out for this year in hopes of getting a 2 out of 3, right? And being better in 2025. Like you said, Gausman could be one of those guys. I think Chris Bassett might even be a better option, as he's a player who's a free agent after 2025. So again, it's a year plus of him. Chad Green, once he comes off the IL, maybe you're able to get something for him. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. These are the kind of players where they're not free agents after this year. It's a little bit further down the line. Justin Turner, and Yusei Kikuchi are free agents after this year.
Yeah.
So since they're not going to be back next year, you can go ahead and get something for nothing, if you will, and it still allows you to contend and be relevant in 2025 with Bo and Vlad. And so I don't know, maybe that's like the safest bet, is to have smaller subtractions this year. Not to say that Yusei Kikuchi and Chris Bassett, these are smaller guys. They're just guys that are going to be gone sooner than later. It could allow you to have another bite at the apple in 2025.
I'm remembering back to when Trey Turner was traded, because if I recall correctly, no one saw that one coming. I mean, we thought, okay, Scherzer's going to be a free agent. They might deal him. But when Trey Turner was included, it was like they just traded Trey Turner because they still had him under control for another year. I think like Bo Bichette getting dealt at this deadline would send that level of shockwaves. And I don't know which team would be the one that would step up to acquire. Maybe it is the Dodgers again, that are the team that just does it, because they certainly could, move Mookie back to second base, wherever they wanted to put him. They could make it work. But that's the guy that I'm curious about the most, because I feel like he's the one that they'd either extend or they'd really want to make sure they got value out of. With Vladdy, I just don't know what the value of a first baseman is. Like that's the constant debate I'm having on my show with people talking about Pete Alonso getting traded. Is I'm like, I don't know if you get anything more than the value of extending him the qualifying offer and getting a pick. Like I really don't know. So Bo Bichette is the really curious case I have when it comes to the Blue Jays and just what they do in general. I do agree, though. Probably the happy middle ground that they find is trading off a piece like Kikuchi, who's going to be a free agent. If Justin Turner can hit a little bit better before the deadline, he's another guy. But yeah, it's a weird place the Blue Jays are in. I think the Blue Jays and the Cardinals are caught in this in between. When we look at these three teams that we talked about, the Mets are the one that is just like, yeah, they're probably just going to sell. There's probably not much of a middle ground.
I would agree with Bichette playing the more premium position at shortstop. Yeah. There are defensive questions about Vlad Guerrero Jr. And I can remember back when Ryan Howard got his second extension from the Phillies when it wasn't necessary. And everyone recognize like this guy is probably not going to age very well, and so they overextended that extension in a big way. And one of the indicators that I like to look at on Baseball Reference is similar batters, right? And you can kind of say who's in a guy's class, like who are other players that have put these numbers up at a certain age. And if you look at the top 10 of this player, you tell me if this is a superstar worth trading major prospects for. And again, this is only one indicator, right? Only one metric, if you will. Geronimo Barroa, Luke Easter, Brad Fulmer, Willie Aikens, Cal Daniels, Reese Hoskins, Luke Scott, Uribio Durazo, Christian Walker, and Brian Roberts. Okay, those last two are pretty good. Those are the 10 most similar batters through age 26 for Vlad Guerrero Jr.
Wow.
Is this going to be a superstar-like player? Is this going to be like a Prince Fielder type, right? A second-generation slugging first baseman? And he very well could, but there are a lot of indicators to suggest that, there's a lot of flash with the home run. He's got a big name recognition, but there's issues with defense at first base, and when he's bad, he looks bad. You probably want to link yourself to a different second-generation guy in Bo Bichette versus Vlad Guerrero Jr.
It's interesting because how much does the name change our view of the player? Because I think that certainly has been the case with Vladdy, because it's literally the same name. It's not like Bo Bichette and Dante Bichette, and it's also when it comes to the fathers, you had a Hall of Famer with one of them, and he's had his moments, the home run derby and everything else, and being right there with Ohtani for the MVP that one year, but. Yeah, I feel like we feel like there's more peaks and valleys with Vladdy, but when you kind of look at it and when you compare him to other hitters, maybe the values have been more pronounced. And so if you're talking about not only trading for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but also the prospect of then extending or signing when he becomes a free agent, how many teams are going to be really excited to sign this guy to a 7-year deal when the back half of that contract can look horrible? You mentioned the Ryan Howard contract. I was also thinking of the Chris Davis contract in Baltimore. Like those first base contracts don't always age well. So yeah, they're in a really tough spot. So we'll see if the Blue Jays can turn it on. They certainly have the talent that this conversation completely shifts, and they might be buyers at the deadline, but they are a team that we have to watch. So that's going to be all for today's episode, though. I had a topic that we're gonna tease for next time because we went a little bit longer today. It was a great article we had on the site, so if you want to go and read it. The Nationals made the most of the Juan Soto trade. We're going to talk about that next time because the return they've had has been fantastic in Washington considering all the circumstances, and that story's not going anywhere. So we'll get to that on our next stream. We appreciate all of you who tuned in to watch live today. If you are either watching the follow-up on Twitter or on YouTube, make sure you head over to our YouTube channel to catch all the individual topics of the show. We break them up. You can also listen to the audio version of Who's Better Baseball wherever you get your podcast. You can find us on social media at Who's Better BB, and we'll be back with another stream later on this week or early next week.